Hi everyone, welcome to day 2 of the Daphne Sunflower Seams Sew Along. Today we will be completing steps 1 through 15, which will be creating our bodice. First things first, you'll want to make sure that you have your 2 mirrored front top mains and your waistband main. The first thing that you are going to do is transfer the gathering markings from your top main piece onto your fabric. Next, you will sew 2 rows of gathering stitches. The first one 1/4 of an inch from the raw edge, and the second row 1/4 of an inch away from the first row. And you will sew these 2 gathering stitches in between the 2 markings. Now these gathering stitches are not going to be pulled so much that you actually see them. They are simply put there to help ease our top main into our waistband. So go ahead and add the gathering stitches to the second mirrored piece. Next, take your waistband and with the right side of the fabric facing up, lay one of your mirrored top mains on top of the waistband with the right sides of the fabric touching. You will want to align this blunt edge of the top main with the straight horizontal edge of the waistband, like so. And place a pin. Now you will continue easing the top main into the waistband, pinning as you go. And remember, those gathering stitches are there for you to pull in case you need help getting this top piece to ease into that waistband. And if you don't have to pull them, that's totally fine too. Once you have that top piece pinned to your waistband, you will then want to sew along this curved edge using your 3/8 inch seam allowance. Next, you will want to repeat those steps for the mirrored top side. So with the waistband right side facing up, you want to lay your top main on top of the waistband with the right sides of the fabric touching. You will want to align those blunt ends with that outside corner lined up. And at this point, it is going to overlap, but that's okay because it's not going to get hit in our seam allowance. So pin that in place and then continue pinning as you ease it into the waistband. Next, you will want to trim away half the seam allowance that you created on your top main and your waistband. So you will have 2 of them. So go ahead and trim both of them, half of the seam allowances away, and then cut notches into your curves. Next, you will fold your top main piece in half and align these 2 tiny raw edges right here at the top center. Next, you will want to sew using a 1/8 seam allowance this little raw edge together. The purpose of this is just to make sure that your bodice doesn't pull open at all whenever you're attaching it to your lining. Once that little edge is sewn together at the top, you will want to iron the waistband and front main seams upward towards the front top main, and then top stitch along that seam on the front on the front top main pieces. Now you will want to take your back main piece and lay it on top of the front main, aligning the shoulder seams and the arm size, making sure that the right sides of the fabric are touching. You will want to pin along the shoulder seam and then sew. Now you will want to attach the opposite back main piece to the opposite shoulder seam and then press both shoulder seams open on the inside, on the wrong side of your main bodice piece. Now you will want to repeat those steps for the lining back pieces and the front bodice line. Once those shoulder seams are pressed open, you will want to lay the bodice lining on top of the bodice main with the right sides of the fabric touching and align the shoulder seams and the neckline. Once you have it lined up the way it should be, you will want to place pins around the neckline and the shoulder seam. Once your main and lining are pinned together, you will want to measure 2 inches from the left shoulder seam and place a pin. Now measure 2 inches from the right shoulder seam and place a pin. Now you will want to sew using your 3/8 inch seam allowance from the left pin around the neckline and back to the right pin. Now you will take your scissors and trim away half the seam allowance, leaving the unsewn back portion untrimmed. Be sure to clip your corners. Clipping your corners is very important to make sure that the bodice is going to lay flat. Turn your bodice right side out and press well. Set your bodice piece off to the side and grab your back elastic casing piece. Starting at the top of the fold, you will want to sew 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Now you will create your casings by sewing 3/8 of an inch away from the line you just sewed. Once you reach the end, you will come back and sew another line 3/8 of an inch away from the last line sewn. And you will repeat that process until you reach the end of your back elastic casing with a 1/2 inch left to spare at the end. The amount of casings will vary based on the size that you are creating. This is a 2T and I ended up having 13 casings. You will insert a piece of elastic into every other one. So starting at the top casing, you will add a row of elastic, skip a casing, add a row of elastic, skip, and so on. And continue that process until you do not have any more elastic casings. To insert your elastic, you will want to take a piece of 1/4 inch elastic that is cut to the measurement that's found in the cut chart. You will want to attach one end of your elastic to a safety pin. Then insert that safety pin in between the 2 layers of fabric of your casing. And how I do it is I pull my elastic casing through until 1/4 of an inch of the tail, and then I secure this end of the elastic by sewing over it multiple times. And once that end is secured, then I continue feeding my safety pin and elastic all the way through. And then I secure that end. And to me, that just helps this whole process go a little bit faster since we're adding so many pieces of elastic. So you will continue that process for every other casing until you reach the bottom. Once you have added all of your elastic strips, then your back bodice casing should look something like this. So now you will want to take your bodice piece and lay it down with the main side facing up. Focusing on one side of the back bodice, flip the back bodice lining that is unsewn up and out of the way. Take your back elastic casing and lay it on top of your back main piece with the right sides of the fabric touching. If you are using directional fabric, you will want to make sure that the correct side is touching the right side of the fabric of your back bodice. Align the vertical raw edge of the elastic casing with the raw edge of your back bodice, as well as the bottom raw edge of your elastic casing with the bottom raw edge of your back bodice. Baste the elastic casing to the back bodice. Once that is basted in place, you will bring your back bodice lining and lay it back over with the right sides of the lining touching your elastic casing, and align the straight raw edges. You will now sew starting where you left off when you sewed your neckline all the way down to the bottom. Turn your bodice right side out again, and you will see that your elastic casing is now joined on one side of your back bodice. We will now repeat the process for the other side of the back bodice. So flip your lining out of the way. This time, to lay your elastic casing on top of the right side of the back main, you will need to flip the entire bodice over in half. So align those horizontal raw edges as well as the bottom vertical raw edges and baste in place. And then bring that lining back over with the right sides of the back bodices touching, and sew the gap that was left unsewn a few steps back. Once both back bodice pieces are attached to your back elastic casing, you will want to top stitch starting at the bottom raw edge in the back, up towards the shoulder seam, around the neckline, and then back down to the opposite bottom raw edge. Now to complete our bodice, you will want to lay your bodice in half with the main right sides of the fabric touching. Flip the lining out of the way and align the side seams of the main bodice and pin in place. As you can see here, my lining is flipped away in both the front and the back, and now sew along the side seam. Now, you will want to align the side seams with the right sides of the fabric touching for the lining. You will want to press both the main and the lining side seams open, and then repeat those steps for the opposite side seam. And you have just completed day 2 of the Sunflower Seams Daphne Sew Along. Be sure to join us tomorrow for day 3 as we create and attach our short and long sleeves.